Hello, everyone. I'm Rich Cosentino. I'm president of Lander University, and I welcome you here this evening. We're excited about this. It's our first candidate forum. It's sponsored by Lander University, Greenwood Chamber of Commerce, and the Index Journal. We plan on doing this every 2 years, and we're thrilled to have you here with us today. We have distinguished visitors on our stage tonight. I'm going to read South Carolina House of Representatives, District 12. We have a candidate for that. South Carolina House of Representatives, District 13. State Senate, District 10. Greenwood County School Board, District 50, Seat 7. Greenwood City Council, Ward 5. And Greenwood County Sheriff. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to introduce now Dr. Lucas McMillan. He's an associate professor of political science, and he's chair. He's sitting right over there, and he'll take it from here. Thank you, Lucas.
Thank you. Thank you, President Cosentino. Tonight's forum is an exercise in civic education. Lander believes in creating educated and engaged citizens and is happy to host this event to provide our community with discussion about policy issues that face our elected decision makers. The general public and members of our own Lander community have been encouraged to submit questions and provide ideas for issues to be addressed tonight. We have candidates for 6 state-level and local-level races with us on stage, and I'll invite the 2 candidates vying for a position to come to the podium nearest them and answer a series of questions. Both candidates will be asked the same questions, only the order will alternate back and forth. Questions chosen for tonight's forum examine many of the biggest issues before our county and our state. Yet any issues not addressed in the questions may come up as the candidates present their closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to provide an answer to questions from me. If time runs out and a candidate is still talking, I'll ask that candidate to finish. And if they don't do this, I will summon Chris Wallace. So, candidates, you have 90 seconds for your answers. A yellow light next to me will indicate that you have 30 seconds left, and the red light will mean that you should complete your answer in quick fashion. Following those questions, each candidate will provide a closing statement of 2 minutes. This statement can discuss experience and skills that a candidate brings to the office that she or he seeks. I will then excuse the candidates to go back to their seats and call up the next candidates for the following race. So we will go race by race. The audience is asked to remain calm, quiet, and in their seats during tonight's program. No cheering and no jeering, please. We will thank our candidates with applause at the end of tonight's program, but we need to get started. So, first we welcome to the podium those candidates for District 12 of the South Carolina House of Representatives. Former Representative Jennings Maccabee is the Republican nominee. Representative Ann Parks is the Democratic nominee. Please join us at the podiums. Representative Parks and former Representative Maccabee. The first question will go to former Representative Maccabee. If elected to the General Assembly, what are your legislative priorities?
Okay. There are a number of priorities, and I think the biggest one is education funding, not only in primary and secondary, but technical and higher education as well. I was a sponsor of the EFA back in the 70s that gave each school district in the state an equal amount of funding, or was supposed to equalize funding in those districts. It was $500 million short this last year. And I would like to see, out of the new money available, which last year was over $1 billion, that would be funded first to keep our teachers at the southeastern average. Another issue is highway funding. There again, I think that some of that could come out of that surplus. That surplus was created with no tax increase to fund our deplorable roads conditions in the state. And the third issue that I see is our retirement system has to be addressed to protect our state employees. They were guaranteed that they would get a retirement income, and I want to make sure that that doesn't cause them to have to lose money on their payroll deductions. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Parks, the same question to you. What would be your legislative priorities?
My priorities would consist of something that we did not finish last year, which is the roads bill. We need to find some reoccurring funding to put into the roads so that our roads don't get into the shape that they're in now, because industry, attracting jobs, they depend on our roads, and our road systems need to be up to par. They need to be good. Secondly, I've always been interested in public education. I don't feel like the student-based cost is where it needs to be in this state. It needs to be expanded, because I believe that every child in this state needs to have a quality education, because not only do they compete with their fellow students or students in the state, it's now that they have to compete globally. So we need to fund our student-based costs to make sure that our students are allotted a quality education, education that compete with anybody in the world. And the third one would be the retirement system. Need to find some way to put some money into our retirement system.
Thank you. The second question goes to Representative Parks. You spoke a little bit about it already, so we'll get you to expand. South Carolina's infrastructure has been a big topic in the last few years. Here's a question from a Lander freshman. What are your plans to fix our roads here in Greenwood?
Well, as I said, you know, you have roads, you have county roads, state roads, and you have some municipal roads, but we need to find a way to put funding into our roads that's reoccurring, not just one time, not just here and there, but we need to find a permanent source to put into our roads so that if we get our roads back up to par, that they're not allowed to get in the condition that we've seen in the past year.
Thank you. Former Representative McAbee, what are your plans to fix our roads?
Well, as some of you know, I served on the Ways and Means Committee for over 20 years, and I have a pretty good knowledge of where the pockets may be available for, road construction. It's been said that there's a $30 billion need for that. And my contention is, out of the $1 billion in new money last year, a portion of that could have been taken to put into the highway construction program. It's important for economic development to have good roads in the state, and also if you use the previous year revenue as a base for that construction, you could take the new money every year and fund the roads, education, and the retirement system out of without a tax increase. And I think that's important to the citizens of our state. Why the General Assembly hadn't done that, I don't know. But it's a dire need for all of those, because all of these issues affect everyone.
And the third question goes to Mr. McAbee first. What are your views on the state's role in public higher education, and how might these views impact Lander and its funding needs in the future?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question.
What are your views on the state's role in public higher education?
Okay. It concerns me greatly. In my opening remarks, I talked about education. Higher education has come up on the short end of the stick. There are those in the General Assembly that think that, well, we won't worry about higher education. But it's an important matter, especially for parents and students that are trying to work their way through school, because the colleges and universities and tech schools only have one other alternate, and that is to raise tuition, and if you can't find grants and things of that nature. But I think higher ed and technical education are the engine that drives our economic development, and if we don't have good resources there, we can't attract high-tech jobs and jobs that will keep our people employed.
Thank you. Representative Parks?
Well, with higher education, we need good resources for our children to go to school. We also need to have, I think, more of a role from the state in our schools. There are some schools that may get more than other schools, which I don't think is fair. I've always seen that with two, and I've always speak with the president during the time that this institution looks for funding. I think there needs to be some equalization in how our higher education is funded, because just like public school, I think every student ought to be able to go to higher education, to get a higher education if that's what he or she chooses to do. And it needs to be made available for them.
Thank you. We'll now turn to closing statements. Representative Parks, you will go first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. To vote for me, I have a proven record. My biggest interests are in health care, securing public education, bringing real property tax relief, because I don't feel like it's fair that all of the city and the county's burdens fall on the taxpayer. Securing public education for our students, making our student-based costs more than it is. Fighting for health care, as I said in the beginning. I've worked hard on health care. And I will put it like this: a vote for me is a vote for current and proven leadership, and not a vote for the past.
Thank you. Former Representative McAbee, your closing statement.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of issues that are facing this state. I think, if a person is elected to the General Assembly, he or she should go down and vote, on every issue. Unfortunately, my opponent has missed over 300 votes in the House of Representatives, and I just don't think you can be a good representative because the issue that they missed voting on might be an issue that's important for you. But, there are all kinds of funding issues that are important to the state. They're important for health care. They're important for reimbursement for nursing homes. They are important for state employees, and that would include employees at Lander and Piedmont Tech. We've got to protect those people. There are 15,000 less state employees now than there were 12 years ago. And so those people don't contribute because they aren't there to the retirement system. And that's one of the things that's got our retirement system in such a situation. I want to go back and use my expertise, and I was named Legislator of the Year by over 10 groups when I served for the 23 years in the House of Representatives. I promise you, I will represent you, and I will dedicate the time necessary to do a job that will promote our state, promote our counties for economic development. That was my forte, creation of jobs. And I created or helped create over 3,000 jobs in Greenwood and McCormick counties. I've seen some economic development, but it could be a lot better. God bless you, and thank you very much for inviting us tonight.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Jennings McAbee and Ann Parks are the candidates for State House District 12. We will excuse them back to their seats, and we will welcome the candidates for our next race. We now ask Mr. Michael Gaskin, the Democratic nominee, as well as Mr. John McCravey, the Republican nominee. Both of these gentlemen are seeking South Carolina House of Representatives District 13 seat. And the first question goes to Mr. McCravey. Mr. McCravey, if elected, what are your legislative priorities?
Well, the number one question I get asked is the same old road we've been traveling on already here today, is roads. And I did a lot of research on this because it's important. You know, it's easy to get up here and give a sound bite, but we need to do some real work on it. I talked to the chairman of the Roads Committee for the House. I've talked to the House Speaker of the House of the House, and what I found out is that we've got 40,000 miles of roads in South Carolina, which is about the fourth most roads in the United States. One thing we need to do is stop building more roads until we can fix the roads that we have. 25% of our money is going to new roads, so that would be a common sense thing to do. 50% of our roads are in poor condition, and that's a shame. An audit this year done by the governor's office found that the Department of Transportation has a big problem. They're conflicted. The chairman is appointed by the governor. We need, and the commissioners are appointed by the General Assembly. They don't work together, and we have a problem getting things done. So that's a priority. We need to do DOT reform is what we're calling it. The last thing is, you know, nobody wants to raise taxes. That's the last thing I stand for, is raising taxes. So unless it's the absolute last thing that we have to do, I would not be for raising taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gaskin, same question. What would be your legislative priorities?
First and foremost, I think, is education. Education is critical for all of us. We got to make South Carolina attractive. We have to get industries to understand that we have an educated workforce, ready and willing to do what it takes to build your products. In addition to that, I also look at our infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, in order for our industry to come here, the first thing they want to know is how they're going to get their products out. In order for them to get their products out, we have to fix our roads. Now, we can sit here and talk about not raising taxes. We can sit here and talk about different ways. One of the ways I would like to see that, if I bought a car right now for $10,000 and you bought a car for $70,000, we both pay $300. Why can't we fix that? Use that money so that it could be used for our roads, because we have to have a perpetual funding source in order to fix our roads. We fix them, they're going to need repair. Lastly, poverty. We also, in the attraction phase that I like to look at, is make others see that we care about our people, whether it's adding more technical schools or making more technical schools available for folk who need it. We have 18,000 jobs that's available in South Carolina, and 9,000 of those jobs require people with less than an associate degree. So what we need to do is make sure that we support our people, because that's what industries want to see. They want to see how we take care of our infrastructure and our education.
Thank you. The second question is for Mr. Gaskin. What are your views on the state's role in public higher education, and how might your views impact Lander and its funding in the future?
Well, it's one thing for sure, that is, as our young folk go and get a degree, we need to make sure they can use that education back into the state in which they got it. So we need to fund them. We need to also make sure that when they graduate, that they don't have a debt that take them from enjoying the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which we say that they will receive if they get an education.
Mr. McCravey?
Well, higher education is very important to me. My father retired as an educator at Piedmont Tech after serving as a professor at Clemson. My mother taught higher education. I'm even on the adjunct faculty here. I hope some of my class is here tonight, but hopefully they're getting the files credit. But it's very important, and yeah, I know. But it's very important, and we need to prioritize that. So education is what separates us from the rest of the world. You know, we have to have a strong education system, and higher education is very important. You know, it allows our state to progress. It helps with economic development. So anything we can do to help higher education, we should do. I agree with that.
Thank you. Our third question comes from a Greenwood resident and is first given to Mr. McCravey. What is your position on term limits? Do you support them? And how long do you think they should be?
Well, you know, the popular conservative, I am conservative, and the popular thing to say is that you're for term limits. You know, that's the banner that flies. We all have term limits. All the people have to do is vote us out of office. So, I am in favor of some term limits. On the executive, we have term limits for the governor, we have term limits for our president. I think the executive branch does need term limits because they get too powerful under the Constitution. But representatives who have to run every 2 years, I would say no. I mean, you can just elect another one really quick. So I don't think it's a big issue, not in our state anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Gaskin?
Well, having term limits, and I have to agree with Mr. McCravy, you have the power to determine whether or not someone has term limits. You have the power to vote. But what's important here is also looking at, we don't want to end up having a limitation where folk end up cleaning out the General Assembly because they term us up. We got to have some balance there. But I think what is very important is that, yes, maybe 8 years as a representative, and then set out a term. I may run for another office if you may. But we do need change, because being a politician means serving. That's what being a state representative is. It's not a career. It is about serving the people in which have elected you, not sitting back, finding some way to beat the system so that you can have a job.
Thank you. We'll now turn to closing statements. Mr. Gaskin, you go first. 2 minutes.
When I decided to run for state representative, I know that there had to be some very important values. Integrity. You have to be a person of integrity. I think all of us are tired of sitting back, listening to folk talk about this and that, but never stand up for what they truly believe in. They get elected and they hide behind whatever. And also you have to be service before self. You have to have to believe that you really have to provide these services, not just for your church members or the people you enjoy talking with, but you have to serve all the people without conditions and without reservations. And lastly, excellence in all you do. You have to have a bar, because that's your reminder of the folk who in Lower Greenwood who's probably splitting their medicine, or the folk in Northern Greenwood who trying to decide what they got to eat. You have to say that I'm doing my absolute best every single day for all people, for every last person that's in your district, and including the state of South Carolina. See, you just can't pick and choose who you want to serve. You take an oath. And if you don't use that oath correctly, in my opinion, it's treason. If you don't do as you were sworn to do, in my opinion, it's treason. So what's important is that when we elect a state representative, and why you should elect me, integrity, service before self, and I can guarantee you one thing. Before the 2nd of January, before we go to office, I will make sure we have a town hall meeting. And when I return back, I will make sure we have a town hall meeting, because how can I serve you if I don't know what your issues are? So that's why I think you should vote for me as House Seat 13.
Thank you. Mr. McCravy, your closing statement?
Thank you, Doctor. I graduated from Greenwood High in 1976. I went to Clemson, graduated thank the Loudy, not cum laude. Then I went to University of South Carolina School of Law, and I could have gone anywhere, but we chose to come back here to Greenwood because we think a lot of this place. And so we've been invested in the community here. I was on the first board for Greenwood United Ministries. We've been involved, and so I don't want to talk any more about that because there's some other issues that I think I need to talk about. There's a big difference between me and my opponent tonight. He's a friendly guy and I like him, but we have some different views. I'm pro-life and he's not. I was endorsed by the South Carolina Citizens for Life, and he's on record as favoring abortion after the first trimester. I'm endorsed by the NRA. I have an A rating. He did not receive an A rating. He received an F rating because he has a different view of the Constitution than I do. I'm for holding the line on taxes. He's on record as increasing property sales and income taxes. I think the government gets enough of our money. We need to spread it around and use it wisely and not waste it. So I'm for less regulations. You know, a small business has 900 regulations now, state and federal, they have to deal with. He is on record as saying he's for more regulation. I've taken no PAC money in this campaign, and he's taken PAC money from Planned Parenthood. And I've been endorsed by the South Carolina Education Association. I didn't ask for the endorsement, but they gave it to me, and I'm proud to have it. So I feel like there are some differences here, and like I said, I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the candidates for South Carolina House of Representatives, District 13. We'll now ask them to go back to their seats, and we will welcome to the podium those candidates for South Carolina Senate, and that is Senator Floyd Nicholson. Senator Nicholson is the Democratic nominee, and Mr. Brian Hope is the Republican nominee. This is South Carolina Senate District 10. So moving right along, but still within the South Carolina General Assembly, the first question goes to Mr. Hope. Mr. Hope, if you were elected to the state Senate, what would be your legislative priorities?
First, I want to thank you for allowing us to come and speak today. I appreciate all the students coming in. I appreciate the adults that are voters coming in from outside. I want to apologize for my attire. I work for a company called auction.com. Every first Tuesday of the month, we have to work in the state of Georgia. The sale should have been over with at 1:30. At 4 o'clock, I left Augusta and made straight way up here to get here, and I apologize for my attire. The question that you've asked me about my opinion on the importance, you've heard a lot of the issues, the road condition, the retirement condition. Senator Floyd brought up a great comment last Tuesday, the recovery from Hurricane Matthew. All these are really, really important issues, and I feel like I could address every one of them just the same as everyone else has up on the podium. But I would like to bring up some of the other issues that we need to face. Texting and driving. We have got to do something about this. We are losing too many young lives due to this. We've got to protect our kids in the schools. We have got to keep the people out that want to do danger and harm to our students. We have got to approach this and get this knocked out seriously. I just want to tell everybody that I just want to be a servant. I want to do what the people want me to do in the state.
Senator Nicholson, your legislative priorities?
My top priority would be education. Having been a former educator for many years, I know the importance of education, K through 12 and higher ed. And I think it's very important that we have an educated society because education affects everything. You know, we tell our young people you need more than a high school education now to get a good job. So if they're going to be productive, they got to be prepared. They have to be prepared when they go out and apply for jobs because they're not just applying with people in our state, in our nation, but it's a global thing that they are applying for jobs in. So we got to make sure that we are putting the resources into our young people so that they can be competitive when they finish school. So it starts with K through 12. We got to make sure that the technology is in place for those students, whether you're in an urban area or a rural area, and I'm a firm believer that if the rural areas don't have the resources there, it's incumbent that the state provide those resources for those students because when they finish high school, they have to compete with the other students from the urban areas. So it's important that they have all resources there. And the same thing is true when we go through to higher ed. You know, professionals are needed. We need engineers, we need doctors, we need lawyers. There's always a need. So we have to make sure that those kids can afford those higher education and be competitive in the world.
Thank you. The next question comes from a Greenwood resident and is first presented to Senator Nicholson. What are your plans for economic development?
My plans for economic development is based upon education. You know, if we are going to attract industry to our area where we have good jobs, we got to have the trained workforce. If we don't have the trained workforce here, they're not going to come. You know, I think back, having lived in this community all of my life, I remember 1988 when Fujifilm came here, we were all excited. You know, first time that a Japanese company was coming to America right here in Greenwood. They came in after 1 year, we had to hang our heads. You know why? We didn't have the trained workforce. The high-tech jobs, we were not training our students for those jobs. So it's incumbent that we train our students and have the necessary skills for the high-tech jobs for our students to be prepared for. And to go along with economic development, that means we have to have the infrastructure for the companies when they come. When companies come looking for a place to relocate to, they want the infrastructure in place. They're not going to come and say, hey, if you get it in place, we'll be back in 2 or 3 years. You got to have the infrastructure in place, and that means we got to fix our roads and bridges to make sure that when companies come, they can transport their raw materials to their factories and get down to Charleston to ship out the finished products.
Thank you. Mr. Hope, what are your plans for economic development?
I just echo what Mr. Nicholson has said. The education is the basis to the whole deal, not only here at Lander, but Piedmont Tech. There's a lot of jobs that we need to be ready for that don't really need a college education, but they need the education from a tech school. So I think both of the schools here at Lander, which I am an alumni of and I'm a great favor and great supporter of, but the Piedmont Tech is also an important situation that we need to keep in mind too. I think that the schools are the basis of the whole deal that we can grow our future and build our nation on.
Building on that, we're back to Mr. Hope. What are your views? Could you expand on how the state plays a role in public higher education and how Lander factors into that?
I agree with what Ms. Park said earlier, that a lot of times our schools get short-ended because of the stature and the size of the school. I think Lander, from when I went to school here, has really, really grown and added a lot of programs to it. So I think that if we don't come to funding up, we can, like they said before, the only way we could do it is raise tuition. So the funding has to come up. We have to build our school. We have to build our education level. We have to have a number of students ready to go to work as soon as they come out of the school.
Thank you. Have we gone to Senator Nicholson yet?
No.
No, okay.
You can pass me by, that'll
No,
be okay.
I lost my place for a second. That was the Lester Holt moment. Okay, sorry. All right, Senator Nicholson, back to you. What's the state's role in public higher education?
The state has a very important role in higher ed. You know, I think back years ago, the state used to fund higher ed at about 50 or 55%. The state now is funding higher ed at about 7%. That's why, you know, each year tuition is going up to offset those costs and everything. And I think there's incumbent upon the state that we provide the necessary resources for higher ed. You know, and smaller institutions are very important. Smaller institutions like Lander. Everyone cannot go to the University of South Carolina or Clemson. It's important that we have our smaller institution because they are addressing the needs of so many of our students. And a lot of these smaller institutions are recruiting students that are first-time college attendants from their families. And it's important because we need to prepare these young people to go out into the world and be successful also. And a lot of them don't have the resources like the large institutions, so I think it's important that we in the General Assembly provide the necessary funding so those kids can attend and not come out owing $50,000, $60,000, or $70,000 in loans and not guaranteed a good job. Thank you.
All right, we'll go to closing statements. Senator Nicholson, you go first.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank you all for having this forum this evening. And I say that I've been involved in politics for many years, probably about 33 years, serving on city council, the mayor of Greenwood, and in the state senate. And I tell you, every time I have an election, the day after election, I say you forget about parties because you're supposed to serve the people. And that's been my agenda the whole time, serving the people. That's why I'm out among the people to find out what the problems are. You don't have to hear it secondhand to get inside information of what we need to do to enhance the quality of life for everyone. And that's why I've been involved. You know, I got back involved. I got involved because I went to South Carolina State. I came back here and started working, and I had a lot of evil because I was there at the Orangeburg Massacre in 1968. I had a lot of ill feelings about that. But I realized that those ill feelings were not helping things. And what I needed to do is try to get involved to make sure it didn't happen again. And that's what drove me to get involved in politics, to try to make a difference, of doing things to enhance the quality of life for everyone. And that's been my philosophy, is you serve the people and not the party. So the day after the election, I forget about parties because I have to serve all people. And that's been my philosophy the whole time, serving the people. So I will continue to serve the people, because I tell people all the time, if you need to reach me, my number in the phone book. Call me at home. I give people my cell phone. Call me on my cell phone, because I'm a firm believer, if you serve the people, you need to be accessible to the people where they can reach you at any time and any place. Thank you.
Thank you. Your closing statement, Mr. Hope?
I've been a rodeo clown for 41 years and had an outstanding career. Had the opportunity to take my family all over the United States and Canada. Then people ask me, so why in the world are you trying to get into politics? And you can tell I'm not a politician because I don't have the polished answers that they have, the others they have. I just want to serve the people. That's all I want to do, serve the people. I want to be a servant for the people. I want to stand up for what is right. I want to stand up for to the rights of all the humans, even the unborn. Unlike Senator Nicholson, who has voted more than one time to not prohibit abortion after 20 weeks, 5 months. He also voted not to have a picture ID for voting. I don't understand that. I just want to simply tell you that I want to serve you. I want to hear what you want me to do. That's what I want to do. Somebody said, what are you going to take to Columbia? I said, I'm not taking anything down there. I want to try to straighten out what's down there now. I want to take the issues of the people in District 10. I want to take them into heart, resolve them, such as the school that's in Abbeville. There's an elementary school in Abbeville that has not had water in 8 years. They have to truck water into that school. Have we done anything about it? No, sir. These are the issues that I want to face. These are the issues that I want to handle. It's what's important to District 10. That's the issues that I want to tackle and take care of. I stand up for all the people, even the unborn. I stand up for the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. If we don't stand up, they're going to try to take our guns away from us. These are the issues that I want to approach. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for having us here. Just remember, vote for Brian Hope next Tuesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The candidates for South Carolina Senate District 10, the Republican, Brian Hope, the Democrat, Senator Floyd Nicholson. We'll now turn to local races, and I will invite those candidates for the nonpartisan election in our school board. This is Greenwood County School District number 50, the Board of Trustees, seat number 7. So I invite to the podiums Mr. Tom Miller, as well as Mr. David Trent. School board is a nonpartisan election, as a number of other local elections are. And so these candidates are not affiliated with either of our major parties. The first question is for Mr. Miller. What is Greenwood District 50 doing to improve college and career readiness? And what issues do you believe still need to be addressed?
At the front right now, we are currently trying to hire more qualified and competent teachers, teachers that have Spanish as a second language is of most importance. As I think most people are well aware, our state went through a time where school funding was cut and we had to dismiss a lot of teachers. We've been running behind for several years. We've been on a great makeup program since then. We just need recurring funds. I'm glad to hear all of the other candidates for higher offices saying they support our education system, because we are underfunded right now. And if we had those fundings, I think we would have the teachers we need. We are trying our best to stay at the forefront of technology. While we realize that's not the answer to all our questions, it is going to be a part of everyday life for the children of District 50 going forward. So we feel that's very important. We would love to continue to improve our facilities, which I think we've done a wonderful job at. Greenwood, we have facilities that I think all of our communities should be proud of, and we would appreciate more volunteers from our community. That's one of the things the district, I think, is a little weak on. We do have volunteers, but we could always use more. I bet you if you check with any school, they've got a job they'd love to put you to work doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trent, same question. What does the district do to improve college and career readiness? And what issues do you believe still need to be addressed?
Well, I think it's key to really start, if you want to prepare a child for college, you really have to start really in kindergarten. There's a lot of studies that show that there is a correlation between literacy rates and the graduation rates. So I think that we have to really make sure that we're working from the start, and that our kindergarten through 5th grade children are reading at the right reading levels, and that they're proficient. Technology is great, but if a child doesn't know how to read and write, then that's really going to be a detriment to their success going forward. I think we need to also look at a lot of get behind some of our numbers. I've been a little disappointed when I look at our district compared to some of the state levels, and then compared to some of the districts around the upstate. We usually show about 28% of our students qualify for a life scholarship, which is the state average is about 42%. And so if our students aren't qualifying for that sort of scholarship funds, then I feel like academically they're not doing as well as they should. And I think we need to obviously work on that. We also need to work on our end of the year testing to make sure that our students are mastering the subject matter that's there. We lag behind a lot of other districts in that area as well. So I really think we need to get behind the numbers that are presented in our state report card.
Thank you. Here is question number 2 for Mr. Trent. As a member of the school board, how would you seek to make it possible to recruit and retain quality educators for District 50?
I think we got some great teachers in our district right now. I think that you have to create an environment for Greenwood to show that we have a thriving education system. You have to allow or have to look at the fact that education and economic development go hand in hand. So if you create an excellent school system, you're going to attract the education graduates from Lander to stay here and not lose them to other districts. So I think it's key to really, improve the marketing of our school board and our school district, and not let our state report card that shows, an average rated school for the past 3 years to be what the world sees as far as Greenwood School District 50. So again, we've got to really get behind and figure out where our weak spots are and where we can improve from our testing, from our graduation rates, and really, look at other districts and say, hey, what are you guys doing well that we could kind of piggyback up on that in that area as well. And let our teachers do what they're trained to do, which is teach. They're burdened by a lot of policies, procedures, different things with regulations from No Child Left Behind, things like that. But we got to let our teachers do what they're trained to do, which is teach in the classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The same question to you. How do you seek to make it possible to recruit and retain quality educators in the district?
Well, first of all, we're trying, and we've raised teacher pay. We gave them a step increase and an additional 2% increase in pay. That's one of the first steps we made. Our assistant superintendent for human resources has been actively pursuing education graduates from all of the colleges in South Carolina and even outside of South Carolina, as we see that there's going to be, and there is and is going to continue to be, a shortage of teachers. So for all the young people out in the audience that are looking for a good career, I think education would be one, and you would be most needed. We continue to provide the facilities and infrastructure needed to support the teachers, and I think that will attract them and help keep them serving us. We are also looking at ways to help reduce our teacher absences. We currently are reviewing and actually doing some policies where we're actually paying teachers that don't take days that would normally be given to them for sickness or, otherwise missing school. So we're working hard to try to keep our teachers happy, give them a good environment, pay them well, and support them all the way.
Our third question is for Mr. Miller first, and this question comes from a senior English major at Lander. What steps would you take as a school board member to improve reading comprehension skills in District 50? And how does this relate to other issues such as class size?
Well, to improve reading comprehension and just touch a little bit on why we may be suffering a little bit in Greenwood, we have currently over a 70% free and reduced lunch rate in District 50. 70% of our children are qualifying for that. Unfortunately, those same children, what we have learned through a lot of our studies and over time is, just like Mr. Trent was saying, they start losing education from K-5. A child of a affluent middle-class family tends to have a very productive summer, a lot of times doing things, zoo, different trips that are educational. And they come back to school energized and wanting to share those experiences with their friends. Unfortunately, the vast majority of our children in Greenwood, they do good to eat good meals during the summer. They come back to school struggling to get back on track. And as a result, what happens is year to year, our disadvantaged students actually fall behind in the areas it's argued between 3 and 5 months each year. That's a big hill to climb, and we need summer programs and volunteers again to help with summer programs to help keep these kids engaged all through the year and ready to come back to school and learn and grow and prosper.
Thank you. Mr. Trent, same question. What would you do to address reading comprehension skills, and then how might this relate to other issues such as class size?
Well, we kind of talked about that earlier, but I do think that the intervention that's there that we have in the public schools now, where a child is brought out, and maybe separated from their class to work one-on-one with our interventionists that we have in the districts, is key. If a child is not reading at the right level, there is obviously some things that could happen at home, but that doesn't always happen. I mean, people have long days and they run in from this and that and the other sports and things like that. So sometimes the children don't get that kind of tutoring at home. But I think we need to pull the child out and kind of work with them. I think the volunteer program that Mr. Miller mentioned and having that is key. We had the HOST program several years ago where you had volunteer adults that work with children on a one-on-one basis. And really, I think a child that's working with someone that may be of an age of like a grandparent or something like that can really learn a lot from that one-on-one attention. And it's critical that we keep our children at the right proficiency as far as reading. The summer school programs, I think, would be a great idea as well to keep that brain dump that children usually have from going away. And improving our student and teacher ratio, which the district shows it is 22-1, but there are many classes where we see that's not the case, where you have maybe 25 or 26 third graders to one teacher, and that's a lot of students for one teacher to handle.
And now it's time for closing statements, and Mr. Trent, you're back up. Okay. 2 minutes.
All right. I appreciate Lander hosting this. I'm glad to be involved. As a nonpartisan race, our goal is obviously to mention what we want to do to help improve our students. We get to make fun of Hillary and Bill with a nonpartisan race, so that it makes life a little bit easier for us. I am a product of Greenwood School District 50. I graduated from Emerald High School. I went to the Citadel for college and was able to take advantage of small class sizes there. And my mother always knew where I would be after midnight in the barracks, which was beneficial. I worked for a short time in law enforcement, and so I have a lot of respect for our sheriff candidates, and decided to do something a little more dangerous and got into the banking industry. And I've been there for the past 10 years. I really kind of a guy that likes to get behind numbers and look for ways to see improvements, and I would look to do that in the school district. I've worked with a number of nonprofit agencies in Greenwood County, from Cornerstone Drug and Alcohol to the United Way, and realize that it's hard. You know, sometimes your nonprofit agencies have to do a lot with little resources. I have a vested interest in the success of Greenwood School District 50. I have 4 children in the school district right now. From one child's in Montessori kindergarten. I have twins in the 3rd grade, and I have a 2nd grader. So I live and breathe the district policies and procedures every day, and I don't see any reason why Greenwood 50 cannot be an excellent rated school that will attract people here, that will move here, to go along with all the economic development things that the Chamber's doing, the partnership, and others. We can be an excellent rated school, and we have the teachers and the students to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, your closing statement?
I'd like to say thank you also to Lander, Chamber of Commerce, and the Index Journal for sponsoring the forum tonight. I just wanted to say that I currently humbly serve as your District 50 School Board Trustee in Seat 7. My wife is Debbie Miller. She's been my wife for over 35 years. We have 2 children, 1 grandchild, and we're members of St. Mark United Methodist Church. My wife and myself and my children are all products of District 50 school system. My wife and I also graduated what was then Lander College. It's now the prestigious Lander University. I've been an independent business owner for over 25 years, and I continue to work as a licensed building inspector for the state of South Carolina. I ran for school board in 2012 mainly because I was shocked that no one had signed up to run for that position. I ran as a write-in candidate and have enjoyed serving on the board through my term. I would point out that there's not a lot of interest for people on the school board, unfortunately, in our community. Well, there were 5 school board seats up for election this term, and only 1 was challenged, and only 1 person stepped up to challenge the incumbent. And I applaud my challenger, Mr. Trent, for stepping up to help in the community. I've enjoyed serving as your school board trustee. I have no political interest beyond this position, and I feel our current school board has been very productive in improving our district for the students and for our community. I would also like to say that if we want to do something to help improve school system K through 12 in Greenwood County, one of the, I think, most obvious things we need to do is go to 1 district instead of 3, and I do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the candidates for seat number 7 in Greenwood County School District 50, the Board of Trustees. Thank you, Mr. Trent and Mr. Miller. We will welcome another Mr. Miller, this time Mr. Matthew Miller, as well as Councilman Johnny Williams. And both Councilman Williams and Mr. Miller are seeking Ward number 5 of the Greenwood City Council. The Greenwood City Council, like the school board, is a nonpartisan election. Question number 1 is for Matthew Miller. This question comes from a Lander University senior. As a member of council, what do you believe is the most important service that the city of Greenwood provides to its citizens? And how do you plan to improve that service if elected to the council?
I think one of the most important things that this city provides to its citizens is public safety. And we've got great police officers in this city and first responders. And I think that we need to support them even more than we do now. I look on the city website pretty frequently and see positions open for police officers. And I think we need to be going out as best we can to bring in people that can protect and serve us every day and pay them accordingly to keep them around. I think that is the most important thing we can do.
Councilman Williams?
Well, you know, the city of Greenwood plays a large part of Lander University. They work hard together. their police department, and our police department works together. And together is how we get along. And we have always worked together with them as close as we possibly could. We helped them with the Maze duplex, with hospitality tax, which is one of the prettiest places in Greenwood. Land is a big access to the city of Greenwood because they bring people in. The students, they stay here, they work here, they live here, they spend money here, and that's what keeps the city going.
The second question builds right on that. It is for Councilman Williams. How do you see Lander's role in the community? And will you consider supporting Lander in the future with funding requests?
Well, Lander's role is to bring the students in, teach them, they get an excellent education here. They work good, they abide by the law, and Lander's role is to work good with the city and work together. And working together, you can always get the job done better.
Mr. Miller?
I think it is very important that the city of Greenwood continues to support Lander. It's my understanding that currently there's a lot of things that aren't being supported between the university and the city. I think that the city needs to do its best to support the strategic plan of the university. Over 3,000 students next year, we hope, that could be paying hospitality taxes, that could end up being intellectual capital for our community. Those students could stay here. I think there's a lot of things that they could do that the city can do to improve the relationship with Lander that can keep those students here. A lot of students right now, as an alumni of Lander, and I know this, that they leave for the weekends. They all go home. There's not much to do around. And I think there's a lot of things that the city can do in partnership with Lander to keep those students here, to be a good thing for our businesses. Keeping them around could help that a lot.
Thank you. Our last question is for Mr. Miller first. Many Chamber of Commerce members are interested in hearing more about your economic development views. So as a member of City Council, how do you believe our city can grow with future economic development? And how would you support the growth of Uptown Greenwood?
I think the city of Greenwood has done a great job with improving Uptown. I think the improvements they have made have brought in businesses. But once you drive out of Uptown, a few hundred yards, those improvements aren't there. I think a lot of people that want to move to Greenwood and want to live here or want to stay here, they want to see that improvement in their neighborhoods. They want to see that improvement grow outside of Uptown. I speak to people that live in my neighborhood near campus here that are leaving. They have kids. They think that, traffic safety on their street, it's not safe. They don't like letting their kids go outside because it isn't safe. And every year they're moving away out into the county. I think we should be doing everything we can to keep those people here. And I think one of those things could be neighborhood improvements. Cities like Greenville, Columbia, yes, they have that tax revenue that they can do these improvements, but I think with the help of our city employees that have done such a great job bringing in grants for neighborhood improvements uptown, we could get those neighborhood improvements all over the city.
Councilman Williams?
Well, you take the Chamber of Commerce, the partnership, all plays a part of the city getting jobs here in Greenwood. Greenwood needs jobs. They need jobs bad. They got to work. London College helped by education our kids to work in these factories. Paymont Tech helped. But you've got to figure out how you're going to fund all this stuff once you get it all done. The Chamber of Commerce has done a good job. London College has done an excellent job. And the city tries to work the best it can, as much as we can with everybody. It is hard. We don't have much money. The city is growing up. We're getting smaller. And the smaller we get, less income they got. Less income they got means the higher taxes going. And that's one thing you don't want, is raise taxes.
Now it's time for closing statements. Councilman Williams, your closing statement of 2 minutes or less.
Sir?
Your closing statement, please.
Oh, well, I've been on council for 32 years. I've served the people, I listened to the people, I've done what the people asked. I educated 2 daughters here at Lander College. Both of them worked, well, one of them works over here, it's a doctor of education. The other one's accountant. Both of them got excellent educations over here. And if I'm reelected, I hope to keep being the voice of the people of the city of Greenwood. You've got to do what they ask you to do.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Well, I'd like to start off by saying that I was born and raised here. I've always cared a lot about Greenwood, and that's why I'm still here. I've had opportunities to leave, but I want to stay here and I want to make things better as best I can. 3 things that I'd like to focus on. I'd like to focus on keeping communication with everybody in the ward. If I don't know who they are or what they want, then I'm not doing my job. Another thing is improving neighborhoods, like I said, pedestrian and traffic and lighting improvements in neighborhoods to improve safety and property values. These can keep families in our city, bring new residents to move in, and this will expand our tax base and solve that problem of not being able to pay for things we may need. I'm also focused on supporting our existing assets, including Lander University, Greenwood Genetics Center, all of our uptown organizations, including arts organizations that bring people into this town to spend their money and give their business. These things bring our visitors to our city year-round that could end up wanting to live here, to raise their families here, and I think we need to be doing all we can to support them.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the candidates for City Council Ward number 5, Matthew Miller and Johnny Williams. We'll excuse them to go back to their seats, and we'll invite our candidates for our last race of the evening, Greenwood County Sheriff. We're welcoming to the podiums Mr. Arnie Fisher, the Democratic nominee, as well as Mr. Dennis Kelly, the Republican nominee. And the first question goes to Mr. Fisher. Our first question comes from a Greenwood resident. If elected, what are your plans to work on combating alcohol and drug abuse in our community?
First, I want to say thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak. To combat alcohol and drugs, I plan to have specific training with our DU unit to combat this, and that's training that we'll be sending gang task force training, alcohol abuse training, narcotics training. We're going to have a serious situation with heroin coming up. It's starting up north and it's starting to trickle down here. So that's another thing that we're going to have to worry about here coming up very soon. I've been very diligent in finding ways that we can combat these drug abuse problems, having a network with Cornerstone and entities like that to make sure we have a partnership with them that we can work together and combat these problems and help people get treatment and correct the behavior.
Thank you very much. The same question to Mr. Kelly. How do you combat alcohol and drug abuse?
First, I think the first and best way to do is education. You start when the children are younger. You educate them about how the effects can hinder their careers and their school. But first, on those issues, the drug issues, we would map out the areas where we have the most problems in drugs and alcohol abuse. We would use our SLED summary report that shows the types of crime and where the drugs are located in certain areas. Of course, I'd move my resources, whether we need extra officers in those areas to combat those drug problems and alcohol problems. Of course, we'd supply our officers with the best equipment and training so that they can accomplish their task, and they'll be knowledgeable of what we need to do in those parts of the community. Of course, we'll work well with all other departments, where it's Lander Police Department, 96 Ware Shoals, Greenwood City. I think it's very important that you share information and skills and different areas in drug enforcement within the community.
Thank you. Our second question goes to Mr. Kelly. South Carolina is currently ranked number 1 in domestic violence, clearly a stain on our great state. Our online submission form had many questions that asked for this topic to be part of tonight's forum. Therefore, this question comes from a resident of 96. What is your plan as sheriff to combat criminal domestic violence, given our state's record with this problem?
Well, the law's changed a little bit over the years, and so the legislators have come up with some better ways to where the officer, when he responds to a domestic violence, that he does not have to acquire a warrant. He can make a warrantless arrest if there's evidence of an aggressor or there's some evidence that someone has been assaulted, whether it be the male or the female. So that's one way we can do it, but I think, again, if somebody in the community is aware of an abusive situation, we can't combat this without the help of the citizens. They have to alert us that there is a possible situation. Also, the churches, if they can get some counseling for these individuals, hopefully deter or get them to understand, how they need to treat people. I think that would be a very important thing that we need to do, is educate, or counseling, I guess would be a better word for the couples who may be going through something, but it comes back down to families and church. I think they have to really work together with their family members or friends that they have concerns about and get them help and get them counseling.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
The thing with domestic abuse is we're locking people up for the same thing over and over again. And what's happening is people are being incarcerated, but when they get out, they're not getting the tools they need to understand how to correct the behavior. I would want to work with county council and city council. I think what we should do is when people are arrested for domestic violence, they would have to come out and do a series of classes to learn how to correct behavior. I think what we're missing is the education point when some people are being incarcerated over and over again, 3-4 times, and it's just not been, the education is not swift enough for them to understand how to correct this behavior and stop. When we're number one in the nation, it's a sad day. It's a sad day for us to be number one in the nation when it comes to spousal abuse and domestic violence. And that's something I have preached since I've been campaigning in March. I'm a big proponent against domestic violence.
Thank you. This is question number 3, and it goes to Mr. Fisher first. This question comes from a Greenwood resident. In light of recent national events, what are your plans to increase training for officers? Related to this issue, what are your views on transparency of the Sheriff's Department, such as Freedom of Information Act request?
The training part of that. I'm going to increase training a great deal from where we are right now. I'm going to look at the budget and seeing how we can increase a lot more training, do a lot more scenario-based training for our deputies. Not just for the public safety, but for the safety of the deputies as well. What was the second part of that question again?
The transparency of the Sheriff's Department.
Well, the transparency of the Sheriff Department right now, and I know where that question comes from, was based off of, and it's due to certain things that the Index Journal has been asking for information pertaining to situations that are happening at the Sheriff's Office. I intend to be very transparent. I intend to follow the law. The duties of the sheriff are to go by the U.S. Constitution and statutes and the state constitution. I'm not going to go against the law. I'm going to be very transparent.
Mr. Kelly?
Could you repeat the question,
you've got a question about training of sheriff's deputies, and then you've got the part about your views on the transparency of the Greenwood Sheriff's Department.
Okay. Being in law enforcement for 29 years on state and local level, my organization was very ahead of the game in getting that training out to us. I've already had the training from the U.S. Department of Justice in cultural professionalism and conflict resolution, so I understand the importance of getting that out. When those incidents first started happening in the nation, my department got ahead of that, and I understand what it means to get that training to these officers so they can deal with these conflicts if they were to come here. And as far as the training, the transparency, me as a sheriff, I plan to be transparent. I plan to lead by example, being ethical and honest. We're going to have policies in place, and we're going to ensure that those policies are professionally and ethically followed, and that the disciplinary action, if they do not follow those policies, will be disciplinary actions for those. And as far as the Freedom of Information Act, anything that within the law that is required to be released, you know, I'm going to be open and transparent, but of course I would always have to discuss that with the county attorney to make sure we legally can release that information.
Thank you. We'll now move to our closing statements. And Mr. Kelly, you go first. You have 2 minutes.
I'd like to thank Lander University for having this forum. I'd like to thank y'all for being here to be informed of this critical position of sheriff. If I'm elected, I'll conduct myself in a manner fair and ethical and be very transparent. I want to ensure professionalism and credibility within the department. I've been in state and local law enforcement for 29 years. I was a state trooper. I've been 23 years of my experience. I got promoted to corporal. I worked in Greenville for 11 years, and I got promoted to corporal in Greenville, which is first line supervision. And through the years, I worked through the ranks and up to the rank of lieutenant. And as a lieutenant, I supervised 7 counties in the area. I have supervised 7 counties. I was also evidence custodian for over 10 years, so I realized the importance of tracking confiscated monies and drugs. I've investigated and supervised numerous over the 29 years of reckless homicide, felony deaths, arrest fugitives, had felony drug charges, gun charges, and have supervised many of those over the 29 years. I'm from Greenwood, been married 32 years. I have 2 children. My wife's from Greenwood County also. I've been on a SWAT team. I was also over a civil emergency response team, have been all over the state to all kind of incidents from hurricanes to train derailments with hazmat spills, have been to many demonstrations at the State House Protection, been involved in a lot over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher, your closing statement.
Yes, and thank you again for having me again. I would like to say that I know that voting is a very emotional thing, but this election for sheriff here in Greenwood County, I want you to look at qualifications. I'm the candidate that's qualified that has corrections experience. I was leading my shift in corrections when I was 24 years of age. By the time I was 28, I was on the security detail for the president as a K-9 handler. I'm the opponent that has, the candidate that has the experience when it comes to domestic violence. I routinely responded to domestic violence, and as you pointed out, we're leading the nation in it. I'm the candidate that has actually worked at the sheriff's office and dealt with policy there and understand the changes that need to be made there. And I'm also the candidate who has already balanced the budget. When I was in Iraq, I was in charge of K-9s on 3 separate bases on the southern border of Iraq. I was in charge of the finances, supplies, logistics. I'm not asking you for your vote for me what I can do, or I'm asking for your vote for what I've already done. So please, this November 8th, vote for Arnie Fisher, Sheriff of Greenwood County. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give all of our candidates a round of applause. Tonight, we have heard our candidates for some state level and local level races discuss many of the important issues, and we want to ensure that you have an opportunity to speak with them individually if you so wish. So I am going to excuse our candidates from the stage to go toward our Student Center lobby, and they will be out there so that when you leave this auditorium, then you can meet and greet with them. So our candidates, I'm going to excuse you. I'll ask the audience to remain in place. And if the audience will just bear with me a couple of more minutes. You've been a very good audience. Maybe even an A minus, maybe an A. We don't like to give A's, but maybe an A minus. So as our candidates leave, let me say the following things. Lander is committed to being a community member. It's committed to civic education. It's committed to having our students know about the importance of politics and government and being engaged and active citizens. And as our candidates leave our Josephine Abney Auditorium, let me thank our co-sponsors for tonight's event, the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce and Angèle Laborde, its director, as well as the Index Journal and its editor, Richard Whiting. I remind everybody, whether you're voting for Alec Baldwin or Kate McKinnon, that Tuesday, November the 8th, is Election Day. We hope that all of you will look at these candidates and the other races and make an informed decision as you participate in our democratic process. And our Chamber of Commerce encourages everyone to vote yes on November 8th for Greenwood County. Lander students, remember to scan your ID cards for FOWLS credit. And we thank everyone for your attendance and your attention. Good evening.